Hello everyone, this is MTLJ. Here's my top 10 list of the best used Japanese cars you can get under 10 grand with the most horsepower in Canada. So the first car that comes in mind under 10 grand is the Nissan's 350Z and the Infiniti G35 in North America. These two cars are very affordable and both of them are under 10 grand. And what's most awesome is both uses the VQ35, which is a 3.5 liter engine with amazing 280 horsepower, and tons of aftermarket parts are available for these two cars. As a past owner of the 350Z, the only thing I didn't like were the interior. The door panels were kind of bland, and the dash, well, I didn't really like the whole dashboard because it gave me the feeling of having a Maxima or Murano or Altima. It wasn't very unique feel for a sport car such as the 350Z, unfortunately, and also I didn't like the steering wheel. Okay, so the second on my list is another Nissan, which is the Nissan's Pulsar GTI-R, and it is also under 10 grand. You can easily find one for $8,000 Canadian. So what's really cool about it is it's not only a hatchback, but it's also all-wheel drive, and then it features the SR20DT, which is easily tunable by anyone. Okay, it's one of the best 4-cylinders turbo engine you can get on the market, especially in stock form. And then you have the black top, red top, which the red top gets more horsepower than the black top, but it depends on the price and the budget you have. So in stock form, the car comes with 227 horsepower, but if you want, you can always tune it for more horsepower, and if you're greedy, then you're gonna change for a bigger turbo, bigger fuel injectors, and bigger fuel pump, which will easily make you 300 horsepower. So you're in the market for a nice Skyline, but you don't feel like overpaying for the cost of a Nissan Skyline GTR, then you can always get the Skyline GTS-T, which is a slightly downgraded version, but you also, well, you maintain the very nice engine, the RB20DT, which is a 2-liter this time, but the inline 6 as well, and it makes over 215 horsepower, but it is very tunable, and you can also always put a bigger turbo if needed. And then it is a rear-wheel drive setup, and it is a nice Skyline, right? And you can always get the GTR body kit, but careful, don't get, the GTR fanboys, flame at you, right? And in Montreal, Canada, the cost of the GTS-T can always vary, and it depends in what shape it is, but usually when I see it, it's always for sale for around 8 grand. And then if it has bigger turbo, then you'll have to pay probably more than 10 grand. But they are always negotiable, and people are always willing to sell at a loss because they're losing anyways, so why not make someone happy like yourself, right? So next on the list is the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 1. You get the 4G63 engine, 2 liters, and 250 horsepower. Oh, that's a lot of horsepower. But I mean for the price. Usually I see them around 7 to 8 grand Canadian dollars, which is not bad, right? The only bad point I see is whenever you break something, for example a differential or power steering or whatever, it is quite hard to get the parts because you have to order from Japan, because these cars were only made in Japan, unless there are some parts that works from the Lancer Evolution 9 or 10 that might be compatible with this older model, but otherwise it's hard to get parts for it. But it's quite a good deal, I find, if you're looking for a Japanese all-wheel drive and it has the rally feel to it. For under 10 grand, I must nominate the Subaru WRX. For 4 grand or less, you can always find the Bug-Eye 2002-2003 WRX. That's if you don't mind about the appearance, and you still get the decent engine, which is the EJ20T, and you still get 240 horsepower, all-wheel drive, quite reliable if it's not beating, of course. And if you have slightly more budget, you up it more for between $4,000 to $6,000. You can always find a decent 2004 model between 2005 model WRX, which is slightly nicer than the Bug-Eye, but I have seen people converting their Bug-Eyes into a more recent version of the WRX. And if you're under 10 grand, between 9 grand, you can always find the awesome Hawkeye WRX. Of course, you won't find the STI unless it is maybe rebuilt or it has been very beaten. So back in the days, you didn't have the Nissan 350Z or the Infiniti G35. One of the most powerful car Nissan had were the 300ZX twin turbo, of course. It came with 2 turbos, and not only that, it came with the VG30D-TT, which is a 3 liters engine with lots of displacement and lots of torque to move that big body around. The 300Z is still very awesome. It is not only a 4-seater, it is comfortable, it has a big engine for a lot of horsepower, and don't forget it has Lamborghini headlights. But one of the big negatives of this car is it has not much space in the engine bay to work on. But for under 10 grand, that's a lot of horsepower, and it has a very unique design. Reminds me a lot of the NSX, right? So another car that is very similar to the 300ZX, it is the Mitsubishi GTO twin turbo, of course. It also had a very big engine, 3 liters engine with twin turbo, over 280 horsepower, and it was big as well. But back in the days, it was one of the most high-tech Japanese JDM cars ever made. This is an excellent model which looks good, but unfortunately there's not a lot of parts for it, so that's why those cars are getting more rare and more rare, because many of it are starting to rot. Another very cool car that you can get for under 10 grand is the Toyota MR2 Turbo, which is very cool because it had the mid-engine layout and it was rear-wheel drive, and it was a 2-seater, so it was very sporty car for the money you paid for. Of course, that's if you don't mind, it's a Japanese car. If you're in the market looking for an MR2 Turbo, I would suggest you that you find one that has the engine between 1994 and 1995, which has a slightly bigger turbo, so you're bumping from the power from 200 horsepower to 240 horsepower, and 40 horsepower is a lot for such a small car like this. If you're tired of looking at the sports car and you want something very comfortable with a lot of horsepower, why don't you look at the Toyota Aristo? You would get the legendary 2JZ GTE in automatic transmission gearboxes, and not only that, you would have 280 horsepower at least. Not only it will be very high-tech and comfortable just like in Lexus, but you will have tons of power to play with. And if you're tired of the automatic gearbox, you can always convert it to manual transmission, right? And the last one on my list is the Mazda RX-8. It has a very small engine just like the Honda S2000. It is as agile as the Honda S2000. It also features 6-speed manual transmission. It is rear-wheel drive, and it is much more affordable than the Honda S2000. Oh, and also the red line is 8800 RPM. Usually when I see one for sale, it's always under 8 grand, so you can find a decent shape one for under 10 grand easily. And if you don't like that engine, you can always swap in for a LS2 engine, which you're gonna get tons and tons of horsepower and torque and reliability at the same time, but a very nimble Japanese chassis. The Mazda RX-8 features a 13B MSP rotary engine, which is a 1.3 liter 237 horsepower, but if we convert it into piston displacement, it's about 2.6 liters.